This fly I would like to show everybody is what I call the mini hot. It's a pattern that's designed, you can fish it as a caddis, you can fish it as a smaller stonefly. You can tie it in a lot of different colors. Originally it was in lime green, orange, a tannish color. And then this year we added red. And I fish a lot of flies that have red in them. And for some reason, the red just seems to work really well for me. Maybe it's a confidence on my part, but red works really well. Red hippie stompers at one point was one of my favorite flies. So I fished this fly this summer. We had a lot, or I should say a really great dry fly season. And since I would say from late April, 1st of May, I fished this pattern every day on multiple river systems. And it would always catch a fish for me on any given day. So I'd like to show it to you. It's a new color and not really maybe too popular yet. So what we're doing is I'm going to use a 200R. This is a size 14, and I'm going to attach my thread right at about the 75% point of this hook. The first piece we're going to put on is some micro tubing. I'm just going to do a little pinch wrap to get it started. And then as I come back, I'm going to pull backwards on my tubing just to keep it on top of the hook. Come back where I'm just right above the barb of the hook. Now, all these mini hats have some sort of little hot butt section to them. And what I'm going to do here is this is some Mirage Tencel. I'm going to put a section in right back here. So I'm just going to do about 6 wraps going forward, maybe halfway between the point of the hook and the barb is going to be kind of that measuring point of how long this butt section should be, and you can be consistent from one fly to the other. And then at this point, all I'm going to do is I'm going to count my thread wraps. So I'm just going to do 3 wraps just to get it out of the way. Then I'm going to wrap my flash to that point where I stopped, and then I'll undo my 3 wraps and then tie this in and snip that off. Now on this red version, which is different from all the other mini hots, is at this point I'm going to tie in a piece of red Flashabou. Right at this point, right behind the butt. Bring this forward, bring my thread up to the tie-in point. I'm just going to let these 2 pieces live back here for the moment. Now you can cut this tag off, and normally I'll just kind of keep that there just as a visual reference that this body is right at that 75% point. It's going to help him, the proportions of this fly, and that every fly will be the same. So now what I've done is I'm going to take the section, not including the butt. I'm just kind of in my mind quartering that up into 4ths. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back a quarter of the way with my thread, then I'm going to come back forward. And then on this pass, I'm going to come back another quarter, and then back up to the front. So what I'm doing here is I'm giving this body a taper. And by quartering it all up and doing it in this fashion, for me, it enables me to have consistency so that every fly is the same. Okay, so now on this one, you guess it, I'm going to come back another quarter of the fly down, and then back up. If your thread starts to get into too much of a cord, you can just counter spin your bobbin. That'll flatten this out even more. If you're left-hand tyer, you would actually spin it clockwise. And then I'm going to bring this right back down to where that bud is, or where it ends, and then back right up to the top. So now we kind of have a nice little carrot natural shape to this body. And then with the red Flashabou, I'm going to gingerly wrap this forward, trying to do some touch wraps here. When I first started tying this, I would just rivet with the red. And then the more I played around with this, I really liked the brightness of this body. It slipped a little bit as I came off that collar. So let me just redo this if I can, real quickly. When I say wrap, this kind of being easy with your wraps, Flashabou is pretty flimsy, so you could easily break it or tear it. Okay, so now I'm going to grab my tubing and I'm going to cover the entire body with this tubing. Now, a lot of folks would think, gosh, you're putting a hard tubing on a dry fly. Isn't that going to make this thing heavy and sink? We're going to rely on the hair and the hackle to make this float. But what this does is it makes this body super flashy when I wrap that on top. Even if I did it on bare thread, you would notice how that color really pops. And then also, it's going to make for a very durable fly. I've been on some float trips where I've used this fly all day long and it never fell apart. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use a little bit of prism dubbing. It's another product from Wapsi. And this particular color is sand. Basically what I did was I pulled some of this out of the container. I'm going to tie it in. And then I'm going to fold it back and then wrap right on top of it. And then that will not peel out on you. A couple of stray pieces came forward, cut this about the length of the body. And then I'll come in and just kind of trim it up a little bit, any little wiry pieces. And then I'm going to tie in the wing. This is yearling egg elk that's been dyed, or I should say bleached, I'm sorry. Always want to clean your hair, get out all that under fur, any stray pieces, and put the tips down in your stacker. Might have a little camera shake there. And then there's our tips, all nicely evened up. How much do we use here? That's another question I get a lot. You know, maybe start with a bundle that's about equal to the gap of the hook, And then you can take a few pieces off if you feel that it's too much. Sometimes if you get too much of this on there, it'll have a tendency to want to roll off the hook as well. I'll show you a couple little tricks for that as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make my measurements so that it just comes off the end of the hook. I'm going to change hands. My bobbin's been sitting there for a while I've been talking, so I'm just going to tighten up this thread. Counter, or I should say a clockwise twist to my bobbin. I'm going to do 2 wraps and then tighten up. And if you notice here, I'm tightening towards my body so that thread torque tension keeps that right on top. I can let go of that bundle and it's not going to go anywhere. But to make sure, I'm going to pull a few of these fibers back, make a wrap right in that crease, and I'm going to continue doing that forward. So this really ties in this wing. Okay, each time put her right in that crease. A few more, bring my thread up to about 1 eye width back. And at this point, I can separate my butts of this hair from the tips of the wing. And I'm going to cut this off at an angle. You know, kind of think of a wedge. You can come from the front. You can come from the side if you'd like. Just cut that off. And then now with my thread, I'm going to come back through this bundle and tighten it and clean this next tie-in point for the next 2 materials. You can also see that by creating that little wedge when I cut it, creates kind of just a natural taper down towards the eye. Come back on my wing about, I started everything at about 25% here, 75 back. So I tie my wing back onto the body so I don't have any gaps. You can check, make sure none of your hair has come over on the sides, but that wing is in there. I can pull on this until the hook came out of the vise and that hair would still be intact. So next piece, we only have a couple more steps here. I have a grizzly rooster hackle. I've peeled back a few of the barbs, so I just have some bare stem. I have enough bare stem here that where I tie it in on my side of the hook, it's going to start right about there, go up to the base of the wing, and then I'm still going to have enough bare stem that when I start to wrap my hackle, I got a little space so that my hackle doesn't shoot backwards, it stands straight up. So that's the whole reason for doing this. Okay, capture that on your side of the hook. Bring it back to the base of the wing and then come right back down so that we can start our dub. Now, before I go any further, I always check to make sure that my wing is, or I should say my hackle is tied in the right position, so it's not cupped in the wrong position. All right, back to some prism dubbing. Actually, this is ice. In a peacock black. It's kind of a gnarly dubbing, pretty coarse, but if you just kind of start with just a little bit, you can only bear down on your dubbing noodle here. You can get that compressed pretty easily. Whenever you're dubbing, just go in the same direction. Don't go back and forth. And a little dubbing on a lot of thread is okay. Then come right back down to the eye. And then grab our hackle. And what I'm going to do is, there's my first grab. Come forward. There's 3, 4. I'm being careful not to twist my stem so that my hackle starts jutting forward. Come down to the eye here. Tie that in. A couple wraps, trim this off. And now we can build up our little eye, clean things up. We'll whip finish, 2, 3, 4. Tightened up. Don't have to, but it makes these flies a little bit more durable. Just do a little bit of head cement on there. Really like this hairline artist hull penetrator. Plus it smells really good. That's it. That's the mini hot. Now you can fish this in many ways. You can fish it alone, of course. You can fish it as maybe your first fly, as an attractor, and then drop a smaller caddis behind it or a parachute of your choice. You can drop a bead off of it as well, bead nymph. Real productive fly for me this year. New color for Umpqua. Please give it a try, and I think it'll catch a lot of fish for you. It's been one of my favorites this season.